Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bidami and this is Jack Move I.C.E Breaker, a top-down RPG developed by So Romantic and published by HypeTrain Digital, who have been very kind and provided me with a review copy for this demo, even though the game is free on Steam, so you can just download it and play it on your own. And get ready for the actual release of the game, which is not specified, but it should be released in 2022. Which is a shame because I really liked what I played so far. The settings, the characters, the music, the gameplay, all the best elements of old school JRPGs are here. The only negative thing I can say about the game is that it's short, which is understandable because this is a demo that's meant to create hype for the game when it's released, but still, it could use a secret area or an encounter to keep people interested. As it is right now, I.C.E Breaker is just a short tutorial that's meant to familiarize you with the characters and the settings of the world, as well as the gameplay mechanics, and it does its job perfectly. By the end of my first playthrough, I already knew who was who, how each ability works and when to use it, which items are interactable, and which enemies I should prioritize in combat. Which is pretty normal for a tutorial level. It's a short level that's meant to familiarize you with the mechanics and some basic chemistry between the characters. After that, you're left to your own devices until you discover a new mechanic or a new ability. But here's the problem. I.C.E Breaker only has the tutorial level. So once you finish it, you'll have to replay it over and over again. And that can become boring pretty quickly. And this is where secrets and Easter eggs might do the game some good. A small level will become boring if you don't vary it up a bit with something, either secrets or challenges. Random encounters will keep the player occupied, but after a while they'll become stale and people will look for a way to avoid them entirely, which is a problem when your game is oriented towards combat. Thankfully, the game will feature additional areas which should be bigger and offer a bigger chance to explore. And considering that this is a cyberpunk-themed JRPG, we'll see quite a number of interesting maps, I'm sure of it. Just take a look at the map we're currently on. It's small, it's repetitive, but that's by design. It's an office building, so it's bound to have a bunch of similar-looking offices on every floor. And yet, every floor varies to a certain degree. One floor will have more obstacles and desks that you have to traverse through, while the other one will have more chests that you can unlock. It's not oversaturated with visual effects and pointless animations. It has enough graphical details to tell you what the area you're in is, and anything you can interact with is highlighted in a decent manner so you can tell it apart immediately, which can be difficult when you're using pixel art, especially when you're going for a retro-looking game. The artists who worked on this really deserve a raise, if they got it. And the same can be said for the composer and the sound effects team. They really knocked it out of the park on this one. Just listen to the music of this game. It's catchy, it's upbeat, and the sound effects really match every action the character takes, and the environment. It's a shame that there is no voice acting in the game, at least at this moment, because I have a feeling that the voice actors would do a phenomenal job as well. And considering how much dialogue there is, they would walk away with a very decent paycheck. But that's just speculation on my part. And speaking of dialogue, there is a lot of it, but it is necessary. It helps us learn a bit about our main characters and their motivations. It doesn't have the Shakespearean level of complexity to it, but it establishes the dynamic between our player character Noah and her partner Ryder quite well. You can quickly tell that these two have been working together for quite some time and that they have their own language. They crack jokes at each other's expense, help each other with information. Well, mostly Ryder helps out with information and Noah does the fighting, but she collects data and other important items he can use to help her in the field. And in return, he provides her with lifelines when she's in trouble and information about new enemies and abilities she collects. And while those messages are just simple tutorials, they are stylized in a way that it appears like a conversation between two people. And Noah will respond to Ryder's messages with her own opinions and usually jokes, but it's a conversation between the two of them, so we're never bored. Which is good because there are a lot of conversations to be had. Every few seconds there is something else that Ryder has to tell you, which is understandable considering the nature of the level and everything, but there is a lot. It's sprinkled throughout the encounters, but still, if I were to edit just the conversation scenes, we'd have approximately 5 minutes of footage. Which is understandable considering that the old school RPGs usually had a mountain of text to scroll through. But even so, most people will just skip through it after the first playthrough. So the option to turn off tutorials would be nice. But what is the purpose of a tutorial? To teach us how to play the game. And this game has, I wanted to say numerous mechanics, but the number of mechanics here are pretty standard for RPGs. So let's just name them and show them and get on with it. as you already saw, this game is a turn-based RPG, so you have your regular attacks, special attacks, guard moves, rechargeable super attacks, and items that you use occasionally. But most of the time you'll finish off your fights within 2 or 3 turns, so you won't be using them that much. Granted, this is a demo, so your statistics have been upgraded compared to the rest of the enemies, so you're a god among men at this point. So most enemies will be child's play to you, until you hit a boss, but even then you're more or less over-leveled for him. And that's a problem. At the moment, there is no level balancing between you and the enemies, so you can just grind a specific area and get overpowered very quickly. Which can be fun at first, but by the end of the game you'll get bored and frustrated by the combat because you just one-shot everyone. The game does try to counter that by leveling up your character's progress as well as your abilities. So depending on which abilities you use, they'll get leveled up as well, so you won't get overpowered that easily. For now. Patient and skilled players will find a way to level up all of their abilities simultaneously. But combat isn't the only thing the game has. There is also exploration, where you run around the map looking for interactable objects and pickups, and also fight off randomly spawning enemies. While you explore the area, a threat level will start increasing, so the longer you stay there, the more dangerous it gets. It won't affect the number of enemies or their levels, it will just increase the number of random encounters. Which is okay, but I think it could have been implemented a bit better. No, it should be implemented better. For starters, it shouldn't rise from a 0 to 100 within 5 seconds. And it should increase by my actions, not by my mere presence. Granted, I did storm the place and started attacking everyone, so that's a reasonable response to everything, but there should be a gradual increase in enemies and their complexity as I go along. Throughout my playthrough, my main opponents were security guards, which are basic melee opponents you can kill off with relative ease. The support-oriented security dogs and damage-dealing office assistants came along at the very end of the level, so I didn't have enough encounters with them. I think the threat level is supposed to mix and match these units into one cohesive unit that will attack me periodically as the threat level increases. But as it is right now, there is little to no point to having it, at least in the early game. It will become interesting in the late game and on the bigger level where you have multiple areas to explore and multiple battles to do, but right now it's somewhat boring. It just pumps the same group of enemies over and over again, and when you get a new enemy, the game is already over. The only reason why I went out to look for additional fights was to fill up my meter to use my Jack Move on the boss fight. And in all honesty, that's well worth the effort. The Jack Moves are special QTE attacks that do a lot of damage to either a specific target or the whole enemy party. So as you can guess, their usage is fairly limited. Not only do you have to fight in order to fill up the super meter for it, but you also have to succeed in the quick time event in order to perform the move. So consider the situation before using it. Normally I would despise this mechanic in any way, shape or form, but this game uses QTEs sparingly, so I'll give it a pass for that. If this was a requirement for every special move, I'd drop the game on the spot. And while we're on the subject, there are several special moves you can collect throughout the game. Some will be more combat oriented and some will be more healing and support oriented. And you'll have to use all of them in order to win. You can use them repeatedly if you have the mana for it, and depending on their attribute, they'll do extra or less damage to specific enemies. And if I were to hazard a guess, I'd say that some of them can be used in the overworld to unlock hidden areas and treasures. So this is Jack Move, a short, sweet, and very memorable demo of an upcoming JRPG. It looks gorgeous, it sounds great, and the gameplay is fun. The only drawbacks here are the short length and, well, I wanted to say lack of features, but I think that's on purpose. I honestly believe some gameplay elements haven't been revealed yet, and we will see them only when the game is fully released in 2022. Until then, my name has been Bidami, thank you very much for watching, and good night.